At 32 years old, Malachi Washington made a respectable $58,000 a year as a line operator at the Libby Glass Plant in Toledo, Ohio. It was a good, steady job, the kind of job his father had, the kind that built a life brick by brick, or in his case, bottle by bottle. He and his wife, Selena, lived in a modest but charming two-story house in the Old West End, a house that held all their dreams and a 30-year mortgage. Their joint savings account, a testament to 6 years of his overtime and her careful budgeting, held exactly $34,112.78. Then came Wednesday, April 10, 2019. Malachi came home from his shift at 7:12 p.m., the scent of molten glass and cooling machinery still clinging to his work jacket. The house was quiet. In a way, it never was. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of Selena reading in the living room. It was the hollow, echoing quiet of an empty space. Her 2017 Honda Civic, a $22,000 car they were still paying off, was gone from the driveway. Inside, a single coffee cup sat on the counter, a faint lipstick stain on the rim. In their bedroom, the closet door was ajar. The entire right side, her side, was a void of empty hangers. Her 2 suitcases were gone. Her jewelry box, the one his mother had given her as a wedding gift, was gone. There was no note, no text, no call. Just a silence that was louder than any scream. He checked their joint account online, his hands starting to tremble. The balance read $0. A single, brutal withdrawal had been made that morning at 10:23 a.m. for the full amount, $34,112.78. His life's savings, their future, had vanished on a Wednesday. He stood in the middle of the silent house, a 32-year-old black man with deep brown skin that suddenly felt cold and thin. He was a husband with no wife, a homeowner with a mortgage he now couldn't afford, and a man whose entire net worth had just walked out the door. The devastating truth settled in his bones before it reached his brain. He had been completely and utterly erased. What do when the person you've built your world around simply disappears, taking the blueprints and all the construction materials with them? Do you scream? Do you cry? Do you chase after them? Malachi did none of those things, not at first. For a man who spent his days around the chaotic roar of the furnace, his first reaction was a profound and terrifying stillness. The life they had built felt so real, so solid. He remembered the day they closed on the house in the Old West End, the $1,500 in closing costs feeling like a king's ransom. The house had good bones, but needed work. Malachi, practical and patient, saw it as a project. Selena, he thought, saw it as a canvas. Their first Saturday, he spent 8 hours replacing the rotted wood on the porch steps, his hands sore and covered in splinters. He'd bought the lumber for $180 at the Home Depot on West Central Avenue. Selena had spent the day picking out paint swatches, her brow furrowed in concentration over 20 different shades of white. "It has to feel airy, Molly," she'd said, fanning them out on the $800 dining table they'd bought on a payment plan. "Like a fresh start." He just nodded, happy that she was happy. He loved the way her mind worked, always reaching for something beautiful, something more. He was the foundation. She was the art. That's how he saw it. Their financial life was a similar study in contrast. He was the saver. She was the dreamer. Every Friday, he would meticulously transfer 15% of his paycheck into their savings account. He tracked it on a spreadsheet, watching the number grow. It was his proof of progress, his tangible security, that $34,112.78 wasn't just money to him. It was 2,190 days of work, of waking up at 5 a.m., of standing on a concrete floor for 10 hours straight. It was safety. For Selena, money was a tool. for experience. "What's the point of having it if we don't use it?" she would ask, showing him a brochure for a trip to Tulum, a place that looked like another planet to him. He'd point to the leaky gutter that needed a $400 repair. She'd point to a $2,400 Burberry trench coat she saw someone wearing on Instagram. He remembered a specific dinner about 2 months before she left. They were at a new restaurant downtown, The Heights, perched atop the Renaissance Toledo downtown hotel. The dinner was her idea, a necessary indulgence. The bill came to $187.45 for 2 entrees and 1 shared dessert. He could feel the cost of every bite. From their table, they could see the glass towers of the city, cold and glittering. "Don't you ever want more than this, Molly?" she'd asked, gesturing with her wine glass. Not at the view, but at the idea of everything. More than Toledo? More than the plant? He looked at his hands. The calluses a map of his dedication. "I like the plant," he said, his voice quiet. "I like our house. I like what we're building." She had given him a sad, pitying smile, the kind you give a child who doesn't know any better. "It's a good foundation," she'd said, her voice soft but dismissive. "But you can't live in the basement forever." He hadn't understood then that she felt like she was in a basement. He thought they were on the ground floor, building up. He had no idea she was already planning her escape through a window he couldn't even see. He thought their life was a shared project. For her, it was just a temporary stop, a place to refuel before her real journey began. The money wasn't their future. It was her launch fuel. The house wasn't their home. It was her cage. Every dollar-tagged detail of their life together was, in her eyes, another bar on the door. The $2,800 they'd put down on their used Ford Focus, the $120 monthly payment on the washing machine, the $600 they'd spent on a new mattress from Value City Furniture. To him, these were the building blocks of a stable life. To her, they were anchors, and she was desperate to float away. The first day was a blur of disbelief. Malachi called her phone a dozen times. Each call went straight to voicemail, the same cheerful, recorded greeting, stabbing him in the chest. "Hey, it's Selena. Leave a message and I'll call you back." By the 5th call, he knew she wouldn't. He sent a single text. "Selena, where are you? The money is gone. I'm worried." The message sent. The little green bar under it said delivered. It was a cold, digital confirmation that on the other end of the line, someone was receiving his panic and choosing to ignore it. The silence was an act of profound cruelty. The next morning, Thursday, he went to the bank. He stood in line at the Fifth Third Bank branch on Madison Avenue, feeling exposed and foolish. He explained the situation to a bank teller who looked barely 20. She got her manager, a woman named Ms. Albright with a kind but weary face. They sat in her small glass office. "The withdrawal was made yesterday morning, Mr. Washington," Ms. Albright said, looking at her monitor. "In person, at our Sylvania branch. She had her ID. It was a joint account. There's nothing we can do." He felt a wave of public humiliation wash over him. Everyone in the bank could see him. A grown man talking about how his wife had cleaned him out. He simply nodded, thanked her for her time, and walked out into the gray Toledo morning. The number, $34,112.78, echoed in his head. It was so specific, so final. That afternoon he started making the calls. First, her mother, a woman who had always treated him with a polite but distant coolness. "Oh, Malachi," she said, her voice sighing, as if he were an inconvenience. "Selena is a free spirit. You always knew that. She just needs some space to figure herself out." "She took all our money," Malachi said, his voice flat. There was a pause. "Well, I'm sure she has a good reason. She'll be in touch when she's ready. You shouldn't try to hold a bird in a cage, Malachi. He hung up, the insult stinging more than the financial loss. A cage? He thought he had built her a nest. Next, he called her older sister Chloe. Chloe was blunter. Look, Malachi, I love my sister, but she does what she wants. You were always a little too simple for her. She wants to see the world, not watch glass get made. She'll probably burn through that money in 6 months and come crawling back. Just give it time. The casual cruelty of it, the dismissal of his life's work, left him breathless. They weren't just condoning it. They were framing it as his fault. He was too simple, too stable, too much of a foundation. His last call was to her cousin, Vanya. They had never been close. Vanya was a successful real estate agent in Columbus, always dressed in sharp, expensive suits that probably cost more than his car payment. Her voice was cold and clipped. Malachi, Selena is an adult. She made a choice. Frankly, I'm not surprised. She was suffocating. She told me for years how she felt trapped in that little house, with your little life. The word little was a slap. You need to let her go and move on. It was a coordinated message, a family united in the belief that Selena's happiness was the only thing that mattered, and that he was the primary obstacle to it. No one asked if he was okay. No one offered to help. No one saw the betrayal. They only saw a bird finally flying free, and he was the cage she had escaped. The weeks that followed were a descent. The first bill he couldn't pay was the mortgage. He called the bank, explained the situation. They were sympathetic but firm. He had 30 days. He looked at the numbers. His $58,000 salary was enough for one person to live comfortably, but not enough to carry a $1,400 monthly mortgage on a house meant for 2 incomes. The beautiful old West End house, the canvas for their future, became a crushing weight. He put it on the market. It sold in 2 months for $15,000, less than what they owed the bank. He had to take out a personal loan for $15,000 just to be free of the house he once loved. He was now in debt. He found a small 1-bedroom apartment in the North End, in a tired-looking brick building on a street where the streetlights flickered. The rent was $650 a month, a number he could manage. The day he moved, it rained. A cold, miserable April drizzle. He packed his life into cardboard boxes, his clothes, his father's old records, the few kitchen items that were truly his. He left behind the $800 dining table, the paint swatches, the ghost of her perfume in the closets. His new apartment was cramped. From his window, he couldn't see glass towers or city lights. He saw the brick wall of the building next door. The first night, he sat on the floor and ate a can of cold soup because he hadn't unpacked his pots yet. He was 32 years old, and he was starting over from far below zero. He sent one last text to Selena's number. I sold the house. It was delivered. There was no reply. After that, he stopped sending texts. He just stared at the blank screen, at the silence she had chosen, and began the slow, arduous process of accepting it. The first year was about survival. Malachi developed a routine that was as rigid and predictable as the machinery he operated. Wake at 5 a.m., run 3 miles through the quiet neighborhood streets, shower, drive his 2012 Toyota Camry with 187,000 miles on it to the plant, work his 10-hour shift, drive home, cook a simple meal, usually chicken and rice, watch an hour of television on a small 19-inch screen he'd bought for $75, go to bed by 10 p.m., repeat. His life was stripped down to the studs. There was no room for anything but work and sleep. He channeled all the chaos and hurt into his job. The glass plant became his sanctuary. The roar of the furnaces drowned out the thoughts in his head. The intense, shimmering heat of the molten glass was a physical manifestation of the fire in his gut. He learned every machine, every process, not just his own station. He stayed late, not for the overtime pay, but because the quiet, echoing factory floor after hours felt more like home than his empty apartment. His supervisor, a man named Henderson, who had worked at the plant for 40 years, noticed. "You've got a good eye, Washington," Henderson said one afternoon, watching Malachi diagnose a problem with one of the annealing layers. "You see the whole line, not just your piece of it." Within 18 months, Henderson retired. Malachi, at 34, applied for the supervisor position. He was competing against men with more seniority, but he had a plan. He presented the plant manager with a detailed 10-page proposal for improving efficiency on his line, complete with projected cost savings. The manager was impressed. Malachi got the promotion. His salary jumped from $58,000 to $66,000 a year. It wasn't a fortune, but it was progress. It was a step up, a step he had taken all by himself. With the new salary, he began to rebuild his financial life. He set up an automatic transfer just like before, but this time it was to an account with only one name on it, Malachi Washington. The first goal was to pay off the $15,000 loan he'd taken to cover the mortgage shortfall. He lived like a monk, throwing every extra dollar at the debt. He brought his lunch to work every day, saving at least $15 a day. That was $3,900 a year. He canceled his cable, saving $120 a month. He didn't buy new clothes. His watch was an $89 Timex. His work boots were resoled twice. In 2 years, the loan was paid off. The day he made the final payment, he felt a lightness he hadn't felt since before that Wednesday. He was no longer in the red. He was back at zero. It was around this time that he started playing softball. The plant had a Sunday league, a motley crew of glassblowers, machine operators, and packing crew. One of the guys from his shift, a young talkative kid named Ricky, begged him to join. "Come on, Mal. We need a first baseman. You're tall." Malachi resisted at first. It felt frivolous, but the loneliness in his small apartment was becoming its own kind of weight. He showed up one Sunday morning at a dusty field in Germain Park. He was awkward at first, his body stiff from years of grief and repetitive work. But then he connected with a pitch, the solid crack of the bat, the feel of the ball soaring into the outfield, the shouts of his teammates. It was a feeling of pure, uncomplicated joy. The softball team became his community. They weren't his family by blood, but they became his family by choice. After the games, they'd go to a local bar, a place called the Blarney Irish Pub, for beers and burgers. They'd talk about the game, about work, about their kids. They gave him a nickname, Coach Mal, because of his quiet, steady presence and the way he seemed to see the whole field. They knew his story, in a vague sense. They knew his wife had left. They didn't ask questions. They just made sure his beer glass was full and included him in the conversation. They showed up for him. Slowly, painstakingly, Malachi was building a new life. It wasn't the life he had planned with Selena in their charming old West End house. It was a smaller, tougher, more modest life, built on the firm foundation of his own resilience. He made his cramped apartment a home. He bought a comfortable, used couch for $400. He hung pictures on the walls, not of people, but of landscapes, of open roads and vast, empty skies. He was learning to appreciate the beauty of a blank canvas. By the third year, the ghost of Selena had mostly faded. Malachi had accepted that he would likely never get an explanation, and he realized he no longer needed one. Her actions were the only explanation required. However, the legal threads of their marriage remained. He was still on paper a married man. The thought began to chafe. It felt like a lie. He found a lawyer, not a high-priced one from a downtown firm, but a man named David Chen, whose office was in a small brick building on a quiet street in South Toledo. Mr. Chen's fee was a reasonable $250 per hour. He sat across a cluttered desk from Mr. Chen, a man with kind eyes and a reassuringly calm demeanor. Malachi explained the situation in his typical, straightforward way. My wife left 3 years ago, took our savings. I haven't heard from her since. I want to file for divorce. Mr. Chen nodded, taking notes. This is what's called abandonment, he explained. In Ohio, if a spouse is gone for 1 year without contact, it's grounds for divorce. The process is straightforward, but since you don't know her whereabouts, we'll have to serve her by publication. He explained that they would have to place a legal notice in the newspaper in the last known county she resided in, which was Lucas County. If she didn't respond within a set period, the court could grant the divorce by default. Malachi provided all the necessary documents, his marriage license, his financial statements, the deed from the house he'd sold at a loss. He had compiled everything in a neat, organized folder. Mr. Chen looked through the paperwork, impressed. You've made this easy, Mr. Washington. Most people come in here with a shoebox full of crumpled receipts and a lot of anger. I'm not angry, Malachi said, and he was surprised to find that it was true. The anger had burned itself out long ago, leaving behind a kind of calm, cold clarity. I just want it to be over. The process was surreal. He paid the court filing fees, a total of $350. He paid the newspaper $200 to run a tiny block text ad for 6 consecutive weeks in the classified section of the Blade. He imagined it there, nestled between ads for used cars and estate sales, a public notice for a woman who was likely thousands of miles away and had no intention of ever looking back. It felt like sending a message in a bottle into an ocean of indifference. The total cost of his freedom, including Mr. Chen's fees, came to $2,100. It was a small price to pay. 6 months later, on a Tuesday morning in November of 2022, he stood before a judge in a nearly empty courtroom. Mr. Chen stood beside him. Selena, of course, was not there. The judge, a woman with tired eyes, reviewed the case file. The whole proceeding took less than 10 minutes. Based on the evidence of abandonment and the defendant's failure to respond to the summons by publication, the judge said, her voice monotone, the court grants the plaintiff, Malachi Washington, a decree of divorce. You are a free man, Mr. Washington, a free man. The words didn't hit him with the force he expected. There was no surge of elation, no profound sense of release. It was more like the quiet click of a lock finally turning. He shook Mr. Chen's hand, paid the remainder of his bill, and walked out of the courthouse into the crisp autumn air. He didn't call anyone to tell them the news. He just got in his paid-off Toyota Camry and drove to the plant for his shift. That night, he didn't feel like celebrating. He just felt a quiet sense of rightness. The legal fiction of his marriage was over. The truth of his life, a life he had built alone, was now his only reality. He was the sole author of his own story again. And that was enough. Friday, October 17th, 2025, 4:52 p.m. Malachi unlocked the door to his North End apartment. The day had been long. A new batch of glass had issues with clarity, and he'd spent the last 3 hours troubleshooting with the furnace team. He was tired. The familiar smell of his own quiet life greeted him. A faint hint of the coffee he'd made that morning, the clean scent of the laundry soap he used, the worn comfort of his own space. He dropped his keys in the small ceramic bowl on the entryway table, a $15 bowl he'd bought at a craft fair. He took off his steel-toed work boots, the heavy thud on the floor a daily ritual that signaled the end of his workday. He walked into the small kitchen and pulled a bottle of water from the refrigerator. Leaning against the counter, he pulled his phone from his pocket to check the time. There were 2 notifications on the lock screen. The first was from his banking app. He squinted at it. Incoming wire transfer. $50,000. From Vanya Williams. Malachi stared at the screen, his mind struggling to process the information. $50,000. Vanya, Selena's cousin. It made no sense. He felt a cold prickle on the back of his neck, the kind of stillness that precedes a storm. Then his eyes flicked to the second notification, a text message from a number he didn't recognize. He tapped it open. The message was 5 short words. Vanya. Come now, she's broke. Malachi read the message once, twice, a third time. He set the water bottle down on the counter with a soft click. The room was silent, but his mind was a whirlwind. 6 years. 6 years of absolute, unbroken silence. Not a birthday card, not a Christmas text, not a single word of apology or explanation. 6 years of him rebuilding his life from the rubble she had left behind. He had paid off the debt she'd put him in. He had mourned the loss of their shared future. He had filed for and been granted a divorce. He had built a new community, a new career, a new sense of self. And now this. Come now. The arrogance of it was breathtaking. The assumption that he was still there, waiting in the wings, a loyal dog ready to come running at the first whistle. The assumption that after 6 years of being treated like he was nothing, he would drop everything for the woman who had shattered his world. And the money. The $50,000. It wasn't an apology. It was a transaction. It was a down payment. They were trying to buy his loyalty, to purchase his forgiveness, to hire him as a rescuer. They thought he was the same simple man she had left behind, a man who could be swayed by a large sum of money. He thought of Selena, somewhere out there, her grand adventure having finally hit a wall. He pictured her running out of money, her so-called freedom revealing itself to be just another kind of trap. He pictured her turning to her family, and her family in turn turning to him. The last resort. The dependable, steady man she had thrown away. They weren't asking for his forgiveness. They were calling in a debt he did not owe. A strange, cold calm settled over him. It was the same feeling he got at the plant when a machine broke down, the chaos of the moment fading away, leaving only the clear, logical path to solving the problem. There was no anger. There was no pain. There was just a profound, unshakable sense of clarity. He knew exactly what he had to do. The man who had received this message was not the same man she had left 6 years ago. That man was gone. That man had died in a small, empty apartment, eating cold soup from a can. The man standing in this kitchen was Malachi Washington, supervisor, coach, and a free man, and he was not for sale. On Saturday morning at 9:05 a.m., Malachi walked into the same Fifth Third Bank branch on Madison Avenue where he had once sat in humiliation. He was wearing a clean, pressed polo shirt and jeans. He looked like a man with a purpose. He bypassed the tellers and went straight to the desk of the branch manager, a different person than 6 years ago, a man named Mr. Harris with a crisp suit and an air of professional efficiency. "Good morning," Malachi said, his voice even. "I need to arrange for a certified check and have it sent via certified mail. Return receipt requested." Mr. Harris motioned for him to sit. "Certainly, Mr. Washington. Malachi Washington." "All right, Mr. Washington. And what is the amount of the check?" $50,000, Malachi said, without a trace of emotion. Mr. Harris's eyebrows rose slightly. 50,000. "And who is the check to be made out to?" "Vanya Williams," Malachi said, sliding a piece of paper across the desk. He had written down Vanya's name and the address that must have been linked to the wire transfer. It was an address in a wealthy suburb of Columbus. The manager typed the information into his computer. "This is an unusual request, Mr. Washington. Normally, a customer would handle the mailing themselves, and this is a very large sum to be returning." He was fishing, professionally curious. Malachi met his gaze. "The money was sent to me in error," he said calmly. "It was not a lie. It was a profound error on their part to think he would accept it. I want to return it in a way that is official and trackable. I want a record that it was sent, and I want a record that it was received." Mr. Harris nodded, understanding the unspoken need for legal finality. "I understand. We can certainly accommodate that. It will take a few minutes to process the check and the postal forms." While the manager was busy, Malachi reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a single plain white envelope and a piece of matching notepaper he had bought in a pack of 50 from the drugstore for $2.99. He uncapped a simple black pen. On the clean white sheet, in his neat, steady hand, he wrote 5 words: "Keep it. We're done." He didn't write, "I'm keeping my rebuilt life." He didn't write, "You destroyed me and I survived." He didn't write, "How dare you." All the years of pain, rebuilding, and newfound peace were distilled into those 5 words. They were not words of anger, they were words of fact, a statement of conclusion, the end of a story. He folded the note, placed it inside the envelope, and sealed it. He did not write a name on the outside. The check would be the primary content. This was just a quiet addendum. A few minutes later, Mr. Harris returned with a cashier's check for $50,000 and a padded, waterproof postal envelope, with the certified mail tracking forms already affixed. "Here you are, Mr. Washington." Malachi placed his small white envelope inside the larger postal envelope. Then he slid the crisp, official-looking check for $50,000 in behind it. He sealed the flap, the adhesive making a definitive ripping sound. He signed the postal forms where indicated. The bank charged him a $15 fee for the check and $7.85 for the certified mail service. He paid in cash. He didn't drive to the post office. The bank had a daily postal pickup. He handed the sealed envelope back to Mr. Harris. "Thank you for your help," he said. "It will go out with our mail pickup at noon, Mr. Washington. You can track its progress online with this receipt." Malachi took the receipt, folded it once, and put it in his pocket. He walked out of the bank and into the bright October sunlight. He took a deep breath. The air felt clean. The weight of 6 years, the weight of a $50,000 insult had been lifted. He had not engaged. He had not argued. He had simply returned to sender. It was the most powerful thing he could have done. He got in his car, turned the key, and drove away, not looking back. The strike was complete. It was quiet, it was total, and it was final. The certified envelope was delivered to Vanya Williams's sprawling, $750,000 home in New Albany, a suburb of Columbus, on Monday afternoon at 1:47 p.m. The electronic signature confirmation popped up in Malachi's email just as he was wrapping up a production meeting at the plant. He glanced at it, nodded once to himself, and archived the email. He did not need to see it again. The transaction was complete. The fallout began 2 hours later, 5:12 p.m. His phone buzzed, a text from Vanya's number. "What is this? You sent the money back?" He read the text. He did not reply. He put his phone on silent and placed it face down on his kitchen counter. 6:30 p.m., a call from Vanya's number. He let it go to voicemail. The message she left was tight with controlled fury. "Malachi, this is Vanya. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it's not funny. Selena is in real trouble. She needs that money. She needs you. Call me back immediately. This is not a request." He listened to the message, his expression unchanged. He deleted it. 8:04 p.m. Another call from Vanya. Another voicemail. The control was gone, replaced by shrill anger. Who do you think you are? Seriously? You think you're too good for us now? After everything, you're going to sit up there in Toledo on your high horse and just send back $50,000? She's your wife. He noted the error. Ex-wife. He deleted the message. The next day, a new number appeared on his phone. It was Selena. Tuesday, 11:15 a.m. A text message. Molly, it's me. Vanya told me what you did. Can we please talk? He looked at her name, or what used to be her name in his phone. The I at the end of Molly felt like a tiny, intimate betrayal. That was her name for him from their early days. He held his finger on the number. A menu popped up. Block this caller. He pressed it. Tuesday, 3:20 p.m. Another new number. A voicemail. Her voice was thin and shaky, a ghost from a past life. Molly, please don't hang up. Don't delete this. I know I messed up, okay? I know I did. I was young. I was stupid. I just needed to find myself. I always thought I would come back. Once I had it all figured out, but things didn't work out the way I planned. The money's gone, Molly. It's all gone. I made some bad investments. I trusted the wrong people. I'm in trouble. I saw the money in my account and I thought you understood. I thought you were coming. Her voice broke on the last word. He listened to the entire rambling, self-pitying monologue. It was all about her journey, her mistakes, her trouble. There was no, "How are you?" There was no, "I'm sorry for the pain I caused you." There was only, "I'm in trouble, come fix it." He felt nothing, not pity, not anger, just a profound sense of distance. He deleted the message and blocked the number. Wednesday, 9:42 a.m. A call from an unknown number. He answered it out of habit, thinking it might be the plant. Malachi Washington. The voice was sharp, accusatory. It was Selena's mother. "You have to help her. She is your family. What kind of man abandons his wife when she is at her lowest point? After all she's been through, you have a duty." Malachi held the phone to his ear. He let her finish her tirade. When she finally paused to take a breath, he spoke, his voice calm and level. "Ma'am," he said, the formality a clear line in the sand. "Selena and I were legally divorced on November 8th, 2022, on the grounds of abandonment. We are not family. I have no duty to her beyond wishing her well. Please do not contact me again." He hung up before she could respond. He blocked the number. The consequences cascaded, but they all fell on the other side of a wall he had built around his life. Vanya lost her leverage. Selena's mother lost her scapegoat. And Selena lost her safety net. She had to face the consequences of her own choices, for the first time in her life, completely alone. The $50,000 check returned and canceled was not just a financial document. It was a judgment. It was the price of her betrayal, a bill she had finally been forced to pay herself. Malachi, meanwhile, went to his softball game on Sunday. He hit a double, coached Ricky on his swing, and shared a pitcher of cheap beer with his team. His life continued, uninterrupted, 1 year later. It was a brilliant, cloudless Saturday in late October. The air in Toledo was crisp, filled with the scent of fallen leaves and the distant, sweet smell of the malting factory. Malachi stood near the third base line of the softball field at Germain Park, a clipboard in his hand. The sun warmed the back of his neck. His team, the Libby Glass Crushers, had just won the city's Industrial League championship in a tense 4-3 victory. The celebration was jubilant. The team, a mix of men young and old of all shapes and sizes, whooped and hollered, dousing each other with water bottles. Ricky, the kid who had first dragged Malachi onto the field 4 years ago, threw his arms around him. "We did it, Coach Mal. We did it." Malachi smiled, a genuine, easy smile that reached his eyes. "You did it, Ricky. You all did." Later, as they were packing up the gear, Ricky's 7-year-old daughter, a bright-eyed girl named Maya, with her hair in 2 neat puffs, shyly approached him. She was holding a piece of construction paper. "This is for you, Coach Mal," she said, her voice a little breathless. He took the drawing. It was a classic stick figure masterpiece. A group of figures in blue uniforms held a giant gold trophy. The sun, a bright yellow circle with lines radiating out, beamed down on them. Underneath one of the taller figures, written in a child's careful, wobbly print, was the name Coach Mal. He noticed she had used a brown crayon for his stick figure, a small detail of recognition that touched him more than any words could. "Thank you, Maya," he said, his voice thick with an emotion that surprised him. "This is the best trophy I've ever seen. I'm going to put it on my refrigerator." That evening, he was home in his apartment. The drawing was held by a magnet on the fridge door, a splash of color in his tidy kitchen. His life was not grand. He still drove the same Toyota, though it now had over 250,000 miles on it. He still wore his $89 Timex. He was a supervisor at a glass plant, living in a $650 a month apartment in Toledo, Ohio. By many measures, his life was small, but as he sat by his open window, a cool breeze stirring the curtains, he felt an immense sense of wealth. It wasn't the kind of wealth you could measure in a bank account. It was the wealth of community, of earned respect, of a quiet mind. It was the solid feel of the ground beneath his feet, a ground he had secured all by himself. His wealth was in the sound of his team's laughter, in the honor of being called coach, in the simple beauty of a child's drawing on his refrigerator. He had learned a hard lesson 6 years ago on a rainy Wednesday, that what some people call love is just a temporary arrangement, and that a shared future can be stolen in a single morning. But he had learned an even greater lesson in the years since. True wealth isn't something someone can give you or take from you. It's the life you build with your own 2 hands, the peace you cultivate in your own heart, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing your own worth. Selena had left in search of a bigger, better life. He had stayed, and in the small, simple pieces of his own existence, he had found one. He had not needed to chase her, or punish her, or even forgive her. He had only needed to let her go, and in doing so, he had finally, truly, set himself free.